This is a mushrooms trip report by Sampler, posted to eroid.org on March 30th, 2007. I am not well versed in drugs, and I will never claim to be an expert. Before Thursday, February 2, 2006, I had taken mushrooms only one time. Apart from that, I had only smoked marijuana and been drunk on a few occasions. A week or two before the second mushroom session, I heard that hash was coming into town. My father, who lives in Europe, had smoked hash in my presence many times, so the idea of trying it myself became very tempting. I asked my regular dealer if he could get me some hash for the weekend. He said he would have it by Friday. He did not call me back until the Sunday before the second mushroom session. At that point, he told me that he would not be able to get hash. I was very disappointed. Later that same day, he called me again and said he was investing in a quarter pound of mushrooms. I do not usually act on impulse. When it comes to substances, I like to have time to think, to prepare, to decide if I should proceed. This time, however, I told him immediately that I would buy 3/8 of an ounce. I had no idea that this would become the best $25 I have ever spent in my young life. My girlfriend, who I will call Lisa for the sake of this story, had been telling me many times that she wanted to try mushrooms with me. She said it would be safer that way. Her desire was the biggest reason I bought the mushrooms without giving myself more time to think. The first time I took mushrooms, I ate 1/8 of an ounce. That experience felt very cloudy. It was not very visual. It was mostly a mental drift. I wanted that mental drift, but I also wanted a physical and spiritual transport. For the second time, I decided I would aim for all three aspects. I measured a dose of 1/4 of an ounce for myself, and I gave Lisa 1/8 of an ounce for her first time. I did not have school that Thursday, but Lisa did. I had to wait for the 3 p.m. bus that would take me to meet her at her subway stop. I spent the day meditating on the trip that was about to begin. The wait felt like the longest wait I have ever experienced. I am sure anyone who has waited for a psychedelic onset would agree. Finally, I saw Lisa at the subway stop, and we rode the bus back to my house together. We ate our doses at about 4:15 p.m. The mushrooms were fresh, the taste was earthy and a little bitter. I felt the first tremor of the onset at about 4:45 p.m. Lisa and I walked toward the small woods behind my house. We were looking for something to do while we waited for the mushrooms to kick in. The initial wait felt terrible, but the second wait felt like absolute hell. We found a clearing in the woods and sat down to talk. When the onset finally hit me, I knew this trip would be far more intense than my first, somewhat disappointing, experience. I believe in a spiritual connection to other people. My love for Lisa grew stronger as the trip unfolded, and my belief in that connection deepened with each moment. While we were sitting in the clearing, a lone woman walked through the woods. My senses were already numb, so her appearance felt like an unwanted surprise. Lisa seemed uncomfortable as the woods grew darker and foggy. She asked if we could leave. I did not care whether we stayed or left, but I felt like the conductor of the trip, so I agreed to go. Leaving the woods felt like stepping into a new movie. Faces seemed to appear in the bark of the trees. The lights from passing cars looked like animals moving across a screen. I did not try to stay. My main goal was to make sure Lisa had a good experience. That decision turned out to be one of the most important choices I made that night, because as the trip went on, our experiences began to merge more and more. At about 5:15 p.m., I asked Lisa if we could go to my old grade school. I wanted a bit of nostalgia. She agreed, and we walked slowly toward the school. I appreciated everything around us. We talked, but I suspect neither of us was really listening to the other's words at first. I felt more of Lisa's words than I heard them. That was the first odd sign that my senses were beginning to switch roles. As we walked, colors and shapes popped out of the ordinary world. The most striking color was an earthy green that seemed to glow from everywhere. I looked at Lisa, and she looked at me, and almost at the same moment we both said, "Everything is so beautiful." We continued toward the school. Lisa started to talk about glowing patterns on the ground. My eyes were fixed on the sky. The moon and stars were rising, and the tall trees stretched their branches up around the sky like a frame around a painting. I looked down for a moment and saw nothing, then looked back up and realized that the only light on in any house on the block was coming from an attic painted entirely green. The green light seemed to call out to me. It might have been Lisa talking to herself. She did that many times throughout the night. I pointed it out to her, and we stood there transfixed for about 10 minutes. At that point, I decided that I would look for the religious aspect I was seeking within everything earthy that I could identify with. I was converting my old religious ideas into a new reverence for nature. I wanted to see the divine in the soil, in the trees, in the moss. At 5:40 p.m., we finally reached the schoolyard. A group of boys playing football called my name. I did not recognize their faces, but after a few seconds, I remembered their voices from my childhood. Lisa was talking loudly, moving all over the place, so I did not want to stop and chat with the boys. We walked on and sat on a low step in the lower schoolyard. Lisa lay down on the step and told me she was going to try to melt into the earth. At that moment, I realized how strongly mushrooms connect a user to the ground. I also realized that Lisa was tripping very hard. The steps we were sitting on had a simple pattern, but to me they seemed completely foreign. I could not understand how that pattern could lead me up to the upper schoolyard. The boys started to walk away, but I decided to stay near Lisa and not go up. I looked down at a dark alley in the lower yard. I thought about going down it, but it looked too scary, so I stayed where I was. As Lisa melted into the steps, I sat next to her and stared at my old school. The building warped in strange ways. It felt as if I could pull the windows out and push them back in like giant filing cabinets. This visual distortion was the first intense and unexpected thing I experienced. I was not prepared for it, and I tried to convince myself that it had not happened. That kind of denial would happen again later. I could not explain these things, so I eventually decided to accept them. I realized I was deep in the trip. I remembered my first mushroom experience and how comfortable my house had felt. I was about to suggest we go home when Lisa said, "I need to get to your bed." In any other case, I might have taken that in a different way, but I knew exactly how she felt and I wanted to get there as well. We walked very slowly, examining walls that seemed oddly layered. I looked down at the ground and Lisa said, "The patterns." I cut her off and finished her sentence. "Are absolutely amazing." She started laughing and said that was exactly what she was going to say. We were off the planet at that point. We eventually arrived at my house without me realizing that we had taken a direct route. I had no plan for getting past my mother and grandmother, who were at home. At 6:10 p.m. a lot had seemed to happen. An eternity must have passed, but it was still early in the evening. We sat on the indoor patio for a long time, trying to decide how to get past my mother. Eventually, I stopped caring about the plan. I went into the bathroom and everything around me started swirling. Lisa and I each took our turn feeling the swirl. The only way I can describe being separated from her at that point was a feeling of being in limbo. I was watching, I was waiting, all the while enjoying the fantastic sensations moving through my body and mind. I knew at that point that I needed her during the trip, so she came out of the bathroom and we told each other what we felt. We felt identical needs for each other. We wanted to go upstairs. I dodged my mother's bullets at protest and locked myself in my room with Lisa. We sat down, I took my shoes off, but she could not. Once again, I felt like the conductor of the trip and helped her out. This was possibly the longest process of the entire night. At about 6:30 p.m., we reached the peak of the trip. I put on Alice in Wonderland. The screen had a rippling effect that I had seen on my first trip, but this time it was far more intense. I could not focus on anything for long, and the movie was no exception. We put on many more movies throughout the night, but none held my attention. The first thing that happened after I lost focus on the movie was that I stood up and touched my keys. They were cold and felt damp. Suddenly my entire body felt like liquid. When I took a sip of water, it felt as if the water was running down my own throat. When I touched Lisa, she was warm, and the liquid parts of me felt like syrup. My senses were all mixed up, but they seemed enhanced. She asked me to lie on top of her. It was an odd request, but I obeyed. We kissed, and I felt myself fall into her mouth, and then into her entirely. It was erotic, yet it did not feel sexual. It felt as if we had merged into one being. From then on, we finished each other's sentences and felt what the other was feeling. She was beautiful to me beyond belief, and she kept grabbing my face to inspect it. She said that my face was absolutely captivating to her. We were both beautiful beings to each other, but when I looked at myself in the mirror, I saw a hideous face, as though my skin were coming off in layers. Later, in our pajamas, my mind and body felt like an ancient pyramid puzzle. My body parts and thoughts were coming in at odd and unexpected angles. I could reach out in front of Lisa and feel as if I was coming in from behind to touch her back. It was too much for me, so I went back into the bathroom for a moment.